let some light in.
A vase of flowers makes everything feel better.
Oh, that's Mr. Algie now. I'd better see to the tea. Sandwiches and bread and butter today.
Really? I thought they all ate bread and butter these days. Fashion is a funny thing.
Did you hear what I was playing, Mary?
I didn't think it was polite to listen, sir.
I do not play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with such emotion. Ah, I see you have the cucumber sandwiches laid out for Lady Bracknell. Who could that be so early?
Mr. Earnest Worthing.
Ah, how are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. Eating as usual, I see, Algie.
I believe it is customary, in good company, to have some light refreshment at 5 o'clock.
Well, who's coming to tea?
Merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here. The way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful.
It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with him.
It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business. Don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're ordered especially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you've been eating them all the time.
That is different. She is my aunt. I have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen.
And very good bread and butter it is too.
Well, my dear fellow, you do not need to eat as though you were already married to her. You are not married to her, and I do not think you ever shall be.
Why do you say that?
Well, in the first place, she might not want to.
Girls never marry the men they flirt with.
In the second place, I do not give my consent.
Oh, your consent.
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you shall need to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
This is the cigarette box, the cigarette case you left last time you dined here. But when I look at the inscription on the inside, I find that it isn't your cigarette case after all. This was a present of someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you don't know anyone of that name.
Oh, well, if you really want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily, if she is your aunt? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
Well, my dear fellow, some aunts are tall and some aunts are not tall.
Surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself.
For heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case!
But why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to her dear Uncle Jack. Besides, your name isn't Jack, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It is Jack.
You have always said it was Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw. It's on your cards. Mr. Ernest Worthing, the Albany. I shall keep this as proof that your name is Ernest.
Well, I am Ernest in the town and Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that doesn't account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily calls you her dear uncle. Come, dear boy, you had much better have the thing out at once. I have always suspected you of being a secret Bunburyist, and I am quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I shall reveal to you the meaning of the incomparable expression as soon as you reveal to me why you are Ernest in the town and Jack in the country.
Old Mr. Thomas Cardew,
Who adopted him when he was a little boy.
in his will, made me guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle, lives in my place in the country, under the guard of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
Oh, that is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited.
But why are you Ernest in the town and Jack in the country?
Well, when one is placed in position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone.
And its high moral tone is hardly conducive to one's health or happiness.
In order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my theology, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and simple, my dear fellow. What you are is a Bunburyist. You have invented a very useful younger brother named Ernest.
In order that he may be able to go up to town as often as he likes.
I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid named Bunbury.
In order that he may be able to go down to the country whenever he chooses.
If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, I would not be able to dine with you tonight.
Well, I haven't asked you to dine.
I know. You are absurdly careless about sending out invitations. Besides, now that I know you are to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunburying.
I am not a Bunburyist. If Gwendoline accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Cecily is a little too interested in him.
What a carriage! What clothes and what manners!
Shh, don't stare. You'll have to get some more cucumbers. Mr. Algy's finished all the sandwiches.
Ah, that must be Aunt Augusta. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes, so that you may have the chance of proposing to Gwendoline, may I dine with you tonight?
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Oh dear me, Gwendoline. You do look smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
I am sorry we're late, Algernon. I was obliged to call on dear Lady Hanbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now, I will have a cup of tea. And one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Good heavens, Lane! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches?
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Hanbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
Yes, I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief. I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight. I have just had a telegram to inform me that poor Bunbury is very ill again.
This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying around the question is absurd. I would be much obliged if you could ask Mr. Bunbury not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange the music for my last reception.
Yes, we shall go over the program now if you would kindly step into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. Gwendoline, you will accompany me.
Look at those two.
Sweet. Will she? Won't she? We'll have to wait and see.
Charming date has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk about the weather, Mr. Worthing.
Whenever people talk about the weather, I always feel certain that they mean something else.
Well, I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
Never.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any other girl I ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of the facts. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals.
And her ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest.
The moment Algernon first mentioned that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You mean you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest?
It is a divine name. It produces vibrations.
Oh, well, I can think of lots of nicer names. Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
It produces absolutely no vibrations. The only safe name is Earnest.
Gwendoline, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once.
Married? But you haven't proposed to me yet. And I think it's only fair to tell you beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
She is. She really is.
Gwendoline, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long have you been about it?
There you are. Told you so.
Mr. Worthing!
Uh-oh.
Rise, sir, from the semi-recumbent posture. 'Tis most indecorous.
Mama, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged, I will inform you. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I make these inquiries, you, Gwendoline, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendoline! Gwendoline! The carriage!
Yes, Mama.
Mary,
Yes, madam?
a notebook and a pencil is what I require.
Yes, madam. At once.
Now he's in hot water. Poor Mr. Jack.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you. I prefer to stand.
I wouldn't like to be in his shoes.
Mr. Ernest Worthing. Do you smoke?
Yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation. Are your parents living?
Oh, I've lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father?
Well, I'm afraid I really don't know. It would be nearer the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I was found.
Found?
The late Sir Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have first-class tickets for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman with a first-class ticket for the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, a handbag. A somewhat large, brown, leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
What locality did this Mr. Cardew come across such an ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I must admit I am bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag seems to me to display contempt for ordinary decencies.
May I ask you then what you would advise me to do?
I would advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try to acquire some relations.
I can produce the handbag at any moment.
Sir, you can hardly imagine that I would allow my only daughter to marry into a cloakroom. Form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. Ah. Oh, for heaven's sake, stop playing that ghastly tune, Algie!
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolen refused you?
Oh, Gwendolen is right as a trivet, but her mother is perfectly unbearable.
Did you tell Gwendolen the truth about your being Ernest in the town and Jack in the country?
Before the end of the week, I shall get rid of Ernest. I shall say he died in Paris of apoplexy.
Apoplexy is hereditary. You had much better say a severe chill.
Very well then, my poor brother is suddenly carried off by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought that your niece, Miss Cardew, was a little too interested in your poor brother Ernest.
Oh, Cecily is not a silly romantic girl. She has got a capital appetite, goes for long walks, and pays no attentions at all to her lessons.
I should rather like to meet this Cecily.
I will take very good care. You never do.
Miss Fairfax.
Algie, can you turn your back? I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expressions on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. But although she may prevent us from being man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing can alter my eternal devotion to you. Your town address at the Bonnie I have. What is your address in the country?
Oh, the Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire. I will communicate with you daily. Algie, you may turn around now. You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see you to your carriage.
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I am going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shan't be back till Monday, probably, so you can pack all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
Yes, it's us again. We pop up everywhere.
They don't even notice us.
That's because we are discreet. Maybe they are too self-centered.
Still absurd. They don't even notice that they have the same maid and butler.
Cecily! Cecily, come!
It is time for intellectual pleasure. Your German grammar is on the table. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is, that you should improve yourself in every way.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes I think he's so serious that he cannot be quite well.
You must remember his unfortunate young brother Earnest.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow his poor unfortunate young brother Ernest to come here sometime. I'm sure you would be a good influence on him.
I do not think that even I can produce any effect on a character so irretrievably weak and vacillating. As a man sows, so let him reap. Put away your diary, Cecily. Memory, my dear child, is the diary we all carry around with us.
I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels we read.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel. I wrote one myself in earlier day.
Did you read it, Miss Prism? And was the novel published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid.
Oh, I see Reverend Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Reverend Chasuble! This is indeed a pleasure.
Han, how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I hope, well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short walk with you in the garden, Reverend Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about the headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, but I just felt instinctively that you had a headache.
I hope, Miss Ceci, that you are not being inattentive to your studies. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I speak metaphorically.
Dear Reverend, I find I have an headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure.
Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter of the fall of the rupee, you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, and horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, the Albany. Uncle Jack's brother! Ask Mr. Worthing to come out here.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before.
She's frightened he will look like everyone else.
I'm frightened. I'm so afraid he's going to look like everybody else.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I am sure.
And you are Uncle Jack's brother, Cousin Ernest, my wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I am not really wicked at all, cousin.
If you're not, then you have certainly been deceiving us in a very inexcusable manner.
Of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm pleased to hear it. It must have been very pleasant. Although, I don't think you should be so proud of that.
Oh, I am not. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission.
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Being with you, I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
That is because I am hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entire new life, one requires regular and awesome meals. Won't you come into the dining room?
You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
And here are another pair of cooing lovebirds.
At their age.
Age doesn't matter, don't you know? Love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind. That's Shakespeare.
Oh, here, perhaps.
Lovely.
Like this?
Try another pose.
Like that?
Perfect. Thank you for agreeing to sit for me. I know you are very busy.
I'm only too honored, dear Miss Prism. I never thought of myself as
A muse.
Yes. No. Oh, yes. No, not at all. Indeed, since finishing my studies in divinity and returning to take over this pleasant parish of Woolton in Hertfordshire, I have had little opportunity of spending time with artistic ladies.
You are too much a man, Reverend Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope, I understand. A womanthrope, never. You do not seem to realize that by remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often, I've been told not even to her.
Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing?
I've returned sooner than expected.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother,
Still leading his life of pleasure?
dead.
Your brother, Earnest, dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
He had many faults. But it is a sad, sad blow.
Were you with him at the end?
No, he died in Paris. A severe chill.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Mrs. Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I am myself peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Oh, thank you. You would no doubt wish me to make some allusion to this tragic affliction in the next Sunday sermon. The text can be adapted to almost any occasion, from celebrations to christenings.
Christenings? The fact is, my dear Reverends, I would like to be christened myself this afternoon.
But surely you've been christened already?
Oh, well, I don't remember anything about it. But perhaps you think I'm a little too old?
No, not at all. The sprinkling and the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehension. The sprinkling is all that is necessary, or I think advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour would you like the ceremony performed?
Oh. Well, I might trot around about 5.
Uncle Jack, I'm pleased to see you. But what Harry's clothes you've got on? Uncle Jack, what's the matter? Look as if you had a toothache. And I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
Who?
Your brother Earnest!
Oh, what nonsense. I don't have a brother.
Uncle Jack, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved, he is still your brother. I will ask him to come out.
These are very joyful tidings.
My brother is in the dining room. Good heavens.
Brother John, I've come down from town to tell you that I'm very sorry for all the trouble I have caused you in the past, and that I intend to live a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you're not going to refuse your brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand.
Uncle Jack, there is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury.
Bunbury? I won't have him talking to you about Bunbury or anything else.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me.
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see so a perfect reconciliation. We might leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
You've done a beautiful action today, dear child.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, Algie, you must leave this place as soon as possible.
I've put Mr. Ernest's things in the room next to yours, sir.
What?
I shan't stay more than a week this time.
Mary, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Earnest has suddenly been called back from town.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. No one has called me.
Oh, your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Fairfax like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous. It is perfectly childish to be in mourning for someone who is actually staying a whole week with you.
Oh, you're certainly not staying a whole week with me.
Well, I certainly won't leave you so long as you are in mourning. It would be most unfriendly. Well,
Will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, so long as you are not too long. I've never seen someone take so long to dress and with such little result.
This bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you. Goodbye.
I think it has been a great success. I am in love with Cecily, and that is everything.
Romance is certainly in the air, and these two were made for each other.
I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He is going to send me away.
Does that mean we have got to part?
But before we do, I hope you won't mind me saying that you seem to me to be the visible personification of absolute perfection.
Thank you. If you will allow me, I shall copy your remarks into my diary. Pray, Ernest, do not stop. When I delight in taking down dictation, I have reached absolute perfection. Ernest, do not cough. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently. Besides, I do not know how to spell a cough.
Cecily. Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I've dared to love you wildly. Will you marry me?
You silly boy, of course. We have been engaged for the last few months.
For the last 3 months?
Surely, ever since dear Uncle Jack has confessed that he had a younger brother who was very wicked, I fell in love with you.
Did you? How wonderful.
Ours was such a romantic courtship. You were terribly dashing.
Was I? I'm so glad.
That's why it was so very sad when I broke off our engagement.
What? You broke it off? But why?
Surely you know that it's absolutely necessary for a young woman to break off her engagement to a gentleman at least once.
Is it?
Yes, but then we made up.
Oh, I'm so glad.
I couldn't stay angry with you for long.
My sweet girl.
Besides, there's a question of your name. You must not laugh at me, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to marry someone of the name of Ernest.
Do you mean to say that that you could not love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
I might respect you. I might admire your character, but I fear that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention. Besides, Ernest is your name.
Your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in all rites of the church.
Oh yes, Reverend Chasuble has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on the most important christening, on the most important business. I shan't be more than half an hour.
Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing.
Pray ask the lady to come out here. You can bring tea.
Yes, miss. This should be interesting. More bread and butter needed, I think.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the many elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, let me introduce myself. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. I like you already.
Her first impressions are never wrong.
My first impressions are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily. May I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendoline, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
My mama,
Whose views on education are remarkably strict.
has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. So, do you mind me looking at you through my glasses?
Not at all. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You're here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, resides here also.
Oh no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relation. My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a ward.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who's my guardian. It is his brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother. You're quite sure it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
I'm afraid there seems some slight error. Mr. Worthing is engaged to me.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. I'm sorry, dear Cecily, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
Shall I lead the tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Interesting books in the vicinity, Miss Cardew.
Oh yes, from the top of the hill one can see 5 counties.
I don't think I shall like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept guardian you have, Miss Cardew. I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London. May I offer you some tea?
Yes, please.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
My tea with sugar, and though I asked for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, trusting, innocent boy, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
Ernest, my own Ernest.
Gwendolen, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
Your dear little Cecily. Oh, well, of course not.
Thank you, you may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present around your waist is my guardian. This is Mr. John Worthing. This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh!
Here is my Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
Good heavens, Gwendolen!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolen!
No, I'm not married to Gwendolen, of course not.
Thank you, you may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now impressing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh, are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
Yes, it has been for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
It is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I may have the opportunity of meeting you.
Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming up to town to see me?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
Their explanations appear to be quite satisfactory.
I am more than content.
But there are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them?
Couldn't we both speak at the same time?
Excellent idea.
I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me? 1, 2, 3.
Your Christian names are still an inseparable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you're prepared to do this terrible thing.
To please me, you're ready to face this fearful ordeal.
We are.
Darling!
Darling.
So all's well that ends well.
Oh, no, it doesn't. Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens!
Gwendolyn! What does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to be married Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately! Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental weakness in the young and physical decay in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, I followed her at once. By your luggage train. You will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately, at this moment. And now as regards Algernon. Algernon!
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
May I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
No. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Oh.
Yes, the doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, so Bunbury died.
He seemed to have had great confidence in the opinions of his physicians. I'm glad, however, that he made up his mind at last on a definite course of action. And now may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is this young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me to be a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
This is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know if there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seem to me to be considerably above the proper average. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is this Miss Cardew connected at all with any of the larger railway stations in London?
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Sir Thomas Cardew, of 149 Belgrave Square.
That sounds not unsatisfactory.
I also have in my possession certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, registration, vaccination, confirmation in the measles, both English and German varieties.
Huh. A life crowded with incident. Has Miss Cardew any little fortune?
Oh, about £130 in the funds.
Ah, Miss Cardew seems to me a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. Come here, dear. Pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems about as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
I beg your pardon, but I'm afraid this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent.
What grounds do you object?
My dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment that you consent to my marriage with Gwendoline, I will most gladly accept your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
I'm happy to say that everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christenings? Is that not somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism. Miss Prism and I have been waiting in the church.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism? Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect remotely connected with education?
She's the most cultivated of ladies. And the very picture of respectability.
That is obviously the same one. I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
No, quick! Warner, Tisha! Tell her not to come. Go back! Go back!
She approaches. She's nigh.
Dear Reverend, I was worried. What was detaining you?
Nothing to worry about.
Prism! Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, you left Lord Bracknell's service in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. 3 weeks later, the perambulator containing a manuscript of a 3-volume novel was found. But the baby wasn't there. Prism, where is the baby?
Lady Bracknell, I do not know. I only wish I did. The facts are this. On the morning you mentioned, I prepared to take the baby out in this perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag, which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction which I had written. In a moment of mental abstraction, I deposed the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
Where did you place the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. Where did you deposit the handbag which contained that infant?
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
Which railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
Let's retire to the next room for a moment. Gwendoline, wait here for me, please.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Reverend Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes, here is the injury it received through the upsetting of Gower Street omnibus in younger days. And here on the lock are my initials. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being in without all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes, Mother!
Mr. Worthing! I am unmarried. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid the answer I have for you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? Then I have a brother after all.
But what is your Christian name? Now you have become someone else.
It's Augusta. At that time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened already? What name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the general's name was, but I have no doubt he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years.
Algy, Can you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we were never on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
Well, his name must appear in the army list of the period. Yes, the army list of the last 40 years are here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. M. Magley, Maxbohm. Oh, what ghastly name they all have! Moncrief. Lieutenant, Colonel. General. 1869. Christian names. Ernest John. I always told you, Gwendoline. My name is Ernest. I mean, it is Ernest after all. I mean, it actually is Ernest!
My own Ernest. I felt from the first that you could have no other name.
Gwendoline, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out that finally, all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth.
Ernest!
At last!
Cecily!
At last!
Laetitia!
Frederick at last!
Proper Messina, everyone in positions.
Breathe. And 1, 2, 3. My nephews, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta,
We've now realized for the first time in our lives
the vital importance
Of being earnest.